So with our lovely Mr. Z, ready Zeus? We're going to work a little bit with some leash pressure. So what that's going to consist of is, I know there are some folks out there that, and we'll let him wander for a minute and I'll grab him in a second since I'm going to blab and then do a few skills with him. So when you're practicing leash pressure, this is not the same thing as a leash pop or a leash, correction. I am not a fan of, out of my frustration of the puppy not understanding something or me trying to show the dog who's the top dog in the relationship by scaring or intimidating or harming them in the learning process. So remember, leash pops and corrections are normally being done to teach the dog that what they're doing is not appropriate. The problem there is most of the behavior that's coming out of your puppy or adult dog is a behavioral response to the environment or to how they're feeling at the moment. So dogs that are doing a lot of pulling tend to be dogs that are really either very excitable, overwhelmed, frustrated, or, for example, don't understand what the heck you're asking. So if, let's say, you spoke a completely different language and you were expected to magically understand what they're saying to you and then also do the tasks that they were hoping that are maybe odd from your perspective, that would be a really rough day. And imagine now if that person was also scaring you or hurting you in the process. So remember that when we sometimes do the Jekyll and Hyde type of training, where sometimes we're sweet on the dog and then other times we're abrasive, scary, or intimidating, what we're teaching our puppy again, or an adult dog, is that when you work with us or you're around us, sometimes we can be safe and sometimes we can be unsafe. So leash pressure is not the same as a leash pop or correction, which I like to stay away from. Remember that a lot of times correcting your puppy or your adult dog is actually suppressing behavior and not getting at the root cause as to why is my puppy doing it in the first place, and then how to help them versus how to hinder them and scare them and then not really help them along the learning process. So right now, Mr. Z has decided he'd like to go chew on an antler for a second, and I have normally a few chews out for the puppies so they can work on something throughout the day. So with leash pressure, what we're going to practice is in a calm and relaxing environment, be it in the house, the yard, a place where your puppy is successful and not overwhelmed is crucial. So just like when you're working on any new skill, I recommend to do it almost in a classroom setting first, where you can control the environment and the difficulty of the distractions. And then as your foundation's being laid down and your puppy's understanding the whole meaning behind what we're working on, then we can start to include more distractions, difficulty, distance, or of course in that scenario, novel places as well for generalization. So leash pressure, ready? Zeus. We'll see if we can get his attention. He's like, no, this one tastes delicious. So let's say again, ready? We might go into a lovely little find it to have him disengage from his nice little antler. We'll see if we can go ahead and get his attention. Zeus? Yes, nice check-in. So right there, just a little bit of name recognition. So what we're going to try is with my puppy in front of me, you'll see that he's got his body harness on, so none of the pressure, if he were to go pull because he sees a squirrel or whatever it might be, none of the pressure would then be on his neck as he's making potential mistakes or there's pressure being applied to his body. Because remember, any breed of dog can end up with a collapsed trachea or damage to their neck area, their thyroid glands, or even their spinal cord. So, and if you're getting injuries to the dog, and the dogs are normally very good at hiding injuries, the problem there is behaviorally, you might be adding to the fuel that might fire, for example, potential reactivity down the road. Because I know we've discussed how 80% of reactivity cases stem from a place of ailment or discomfort. So it could be as simple as a GI issue, allergies, ear infection, toothache, but also back pain, spinal pain, for example, leg pain, joints, can of course make you feel cruddy and therefore crabby. So when I'm working with leash pressure, I have my leash short enough where I can feel where my puppy's at. He's like, lady, it tickled my back. And then I'm going to do a little pull and then feed as he comes into my space. So again, little pull and feed. So this is not pulling your puppy across the room. You are not yanking or lifting them or moving them physically. This is again like the tap on the shoulder. That means, hey, excuse me, can you check in? And then when they check in, they get a little paycheck for checking in with you. So the benefit of leash pressure, and I like to start this again with the puppy in front of me. So as I go to pull, I then feed as they move into my space. So this can be immensely helpful because for a lot of puppies, when they feel pressure, they tend to have a natural response to it, which is to pull or push into it. So almost like when someone grabs you, but you didn't want to get grabbed, you pull to kind of get yourself out of that situation. With a lot of pups, when they feel pressure, they tend to pull into it. Some puppies also shut down and put the brakes on because they're feeling overwhelmed. Remember that when you're practicing, if your puppy is having a rough time with loose leash walking, remember to always lower the criteria or soften the environment so you can set them up for success. So back to leash pressure. So let's say my puppy was doing a great job and he's doing a really nice job. Every time he feels pressure, he checks in. Now you would apply it to going and doing some loose leash walking. And this does not mean that if my puppy pulls ahead of me, that I pull back on him. He says, I don't know which side I want to be on. So let's say my puppy prefers this side. I don't really care. But let's say he goes to pull ahead and now there's leash pressure. Then I can go ahead and let's say he was a little distracted. There was technically an antler off in the distance. So let's say he started to pull and he felt that pressure. When he feels the pull on the lead, so right there, notice how there's pressure? I would then wait and see if he goes and checks and he said, the floor smells amazing. So right here, if let's say he doesn't respond, yes, I would then go and help him. So I know I was blabbing. So typically whenever there's pressure and he feels it, if he doesn't check in within the first few seconds, help him by doing either the positive interrupter or try a little bit with his name. So again, if let's say he's not as savvy, we're going to start off first again with him in front, do a little pull. He says, but I just noticed the flirt pull up there. And what I'm teaching him is as he feels the pressure on the harness, it means to come check in. So that way, if later when you're doing loose leash walking and your puppy goes and pulls past you, he should feel that pressure, and as opposed to continuously pulling, when he feels the pressure, he should then turn and then head back in your direction. So obviously right now, well, good job finding it. Obviously right now, he's not as overwhelmed or distracted, so he's not really doing much pulling. But the benefit of teaching leash pressure before you need it is that it's very hard for him to grasp the concept of what to do and then how to apply it if the environment becomes too stimulating. So you could definitely work this in and around your home first and then go from there. So we might go into some loose leash walking, and then let's say he goes, and he were to, that one, again, I dropped my snacks because I got a little slimy. So then we got the train going by. He can hear it. Not sure if the camera picks up on it. So, but if let's say he were to go ahead and pull ahead, when he feels the pressure in the gear, it would create a moment where then he would then come check back in and you feed him for that. So very nice job. So if you're finding this difficult, you could even do this where maybe you have a friend or a neighbor or a spouse or a family member help out where maybe they do something that's a little distracting, not hard or scary, but let's say they're off in the distance, maybe they're wiggling maybe some things on the counter, and now your puppy shows interest, they start to pull towards that person. When the puppy then gets to the end of the lead or to the part where there's pressure and he feels it, see if he goes and then repivots back to you. If he does not repivot and head your direction, help him by giving him either that little positive interrupter to show him how to do the behavior when he doesn't quite know yet, or you could even use his name and do a little name recognition and feed for that bounce back from the distraction. But this should not be leash pressure in the sense of you're walking, puppy pulls, then you pull back and keep walking. If you end up doing it that way, what you're teaching your puppy is that pulling and then more leash pressure equals ignore you and keep hauling or pulling into that direction. So if you find that they're actually getting harder on equipment, which means they blow through gear, remember that tools in the sense of your harness or leash should not be the thing creating behavior. So if you are relying on constant leash jerks and yanking and tightening on equipment, then that means the only way your puppy has learned to stay nearby is because she or he is physically being restrained. You want to almost practice as if the puppies were naked and that the gear is not the thing creating the behavior. Gear is on there for safety reasons. So if your puppy doesn't have a recall, if your puppy would wander off into the roadway, of course we want to set up our puppies for success, and even adult dogs that are still learning new skills. So view your gear as, again, the training wheels. Training wheels don't teach you how to ride your bicycle, but they help you from instantly falling over and getting hurt while you're still learning how to pedal, steer, and of course stop. So just like with your puppy, if the gear is the thing that's creating behavior, I'll get you a wipe in 1 second. Sorry, Ebba's eating some clementines, and they're a bit sticky, and she says her hands are needing a wet paper towel. So, but for leash pressure, make sure to practice just like with your other skills before you need it, so then you can teach the puppy how to do it before you up the ante with the real world situations or really big distractions you might find too hard. But Mr. Z did a very good job working his leash pressure, and even earlier with all the big noises that were happening in the building, he was doing splendid. So he almost didn't even care with the huge loud drilling noise, where again, for some puppies that could have been really overwhelming and maybe even shut them down. So very nice job for Mr. Z with his bounce backs and feeling comfortable with novelty.